Sam Warner in the room.
Hello?
Hello, dude.
Can you just hear my voice or can you see me?
I can just hear you currently, but I think, here you
Oh, there you
go.
go.
How you doing,
Hello,
mate?
mate. All good, yeah. How
Yeah,
you
Sam.
doing?
Yeah, struggling.
In what
Uh,
sense?
Technical stuff,
Yeah,
trying to keep this site together. Now I'm on my own, trying to manage it, and I don't know anything
yeah.
about site building, so that's a problem.
How come Guy left you alone with the site then?
Because there was this troll that was bothering people, pestering people.
Really?
Yeah, and looking into information and this and the other, and it spooked him. And
Stupid.
well, what could they do? They could do this and they could do that, and all of a sudden he became terrified, and so he's gone.
Well, brainwashed, definitely
Yeah,
brainwashed.
absolutely, incredible. And so he doesn't respond to my mails, and so um,
That's crazy, man.
yeah, it is. It is
I mean,
crazy.
I don't see what kind of opposition your site could get. Like, what could you say against it? What are you doing that's so evil that caused people to troll on it? You
Exactly,
know?
but there's just one person, and he's sick, and so all he does is just pester people by just sending them emails,
Yeah,
this, that, and the other. Anyway, let's not give him any air.
yeah.
So, you're Sam. You're from the UK,
Yeah.
and you have been. We've done a session before, so
Uh-huh.
most of the viewers should be familiar with this. And so you
Yeah.
said after the end of the last conversation that there's other things that you wanted to address. Have you got a bit of a list or something?
Yeah, yeah. I've got a quite a big list of things that I like to
Whoa.
talk about. You told me that to look up David Icke, and
Yeah.
man, he's a real fucking amazing conspiracy theorist. Like I saw his
Well,
interview on Wogan, and his comeback from that is just unbelievable. Doing bloody events at Wembley Stadium, it's unbelievable.
yeah. And so he's
There's a
been
clear
doing it now
audience.
for like over 25 years. He's very, very, very thoroughly researched because
Yeah.
he's absolutely dedicated. He does nothing else.
Absolutely. I see a
That's
lot
his
of
life.
parallels with you and him, to be honest.
Well, I mean, we
In
come
that
from the
level.
same city, so maybe we're related somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
Maybe he's my distant cousin. We don't even know.
Yeah, the mannerisms. There's something about the mannerisms that kind of,
Really,
yeah.
I'm trying to get a chat with him as well. We're trying to
Oh, that would
arrange
be
him to
amazing.
have a brief chat with me, and so if that comes off, then that'll be brilliant. But I
Yeah,
don't have a
absolutely.
great deal of what can I say, hope, because he's
Mm.
very, very busy.
He's a
And
busy guy.
can you
Yeah,
imagine
busy
how
guy.
many non-entities would he be getting to take up
Oh
his
my
time?
God. Absolutely. Yeah,
And
yeah.
if he took everybody up, then he'd come on a Skype, and you'd probably get like, "Hi, David, I like you.
Yeah, dude. I
Tell
mean,
me more
that,
about the reptilians."
yeah,
You know,
man.
how
But
many of
I
them have
get
you
the
had?
reptilian thing. There's something in that, though. Like, I understand. I understand it metaphorically, not that they're literally aliens and
Yeah,
lizard aliens, but the fact that our basest form, the basest intelligent in our brain, is the lizard brain.
yeah,
That's kind of metaphorically makes some sense.
yeah.
So yeah, he's definitely up to something. Yeah.
And that's a good handle angle to come from,
Yeah.
because that's a rational person thinking. That's a logical person thinking. Because the vast majority
Yeah.
of people just go, "This is mad." They've got
Yeah. They
no
just
idea.
dismiss
If
it.
you just stop to think, and what is he saying? What does he mean? You know,
Yeah.
if you look at evolution, we're supposed to have derived out of lizards. And so if you know anything about human anatomy, then you'll know that we've got a reptilian brain. And so see the
Absolutely. Yeah.
relationship there, because the reptilian brain is all self-serving. It just wants to gratify its natural instincts and nothing else. And so
Mm.
this is what a Satanist is. That's what they do. They want to
Oh
gratify
God.
their natural instincts, and they don't care about anybody else. That's
I was
simply
just
what Satanism is.
sorry. Yeah. Yeah. I was just going through a Bohemian Grove, and that was the first time I'd ever come into contact with these really satanistic rituals being performed by the elite.
Yeah.
The fact that they go through that, it's almost like watching an animal do its mating ritual in a sense. It's very primal. And to think that these people are the leaders of our society, they're definitely withholding some information from the large population of this planet.
When you look at that, yeah, you don't
Unbelievable.
need to know anything else, really. You look at that and you go, there's something seriously wrong with our world leaders.
Absolutely. And the program is so strong that people don't realize it. Yeah.
And all in cloaks and ritualizing in front of a
Bizarre, man.
30-foot owl. And
What is it called? The destruction of care or something like that.
Sorry?
The destruction of care, something like that. That's what it's called. They're metaphorically getting rid of all their worries or sort of concerns for humanity. I think that's what it's about.
Satanism, just concerns for themselves and for their own self-betterment. And so when you see that, if you're privy to that, this is what I don't get about the human race. I don't get about the world. How much more do you want to see? You shouldn't need to see any more to say to yourself, get those fuckers out of power. Get those fuckers out of power now. They are dangerous.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Man.
But definitely interesting. I mean, I really like looking into that stuff. And there's clearly like a large amount of information that they're withholding from us. You know, I bet, like, have you heard of the burning of the Library of Alexandria?
Oh, of course, yeah. I just mentioned
that's
that in my last Zoom.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, just that is proof that they were definitely plotting against, self-actualization. That they just don't want it to happen, because that's basically the overthrowing of the pyramid itself.
Overthrowing of the knowledge of our history. And you see, if you look at the burning of the library in Alexandria as a metaphor, then that's what they've done throughout the world. They've burnt people that they've deemed to be witches or wizards, or even people like Copernicus, who wanted and did say stuff about, hang on, all you preachers out there and all you bishops and all you, God worshippers, I've got something to tell you. We're not the center of the universe.
Absolutely.
We're just a tiny little dot in the mass of billions of dots, and we're really quite insignificant in our positioning. But you see what they did, they put him under house arrest for the remaining 6 years of his life. And so if he didn't comply with that, then they would have killed him.
That's always what happens with new knowledge. New knowledge always gets rejected, and people are described as madmen. But just because the program is so strong that they can't readapt to this new idea. The same goes with David Icke. I think David Icke has got a lot of stuff correct about our society, and people are still denying it. But more and more, he's gaining a massive audience. And it just shows that eventually these truths, these sort of mad talk, actually becomes real. I mean, look at Einstein. He's exactly the same. His theories were regarded as total bullshit by the mass media.
Well, I mean, he actually came up with mathematical equations that worked, and so they, of course, they're accepted by the scientific world, because other scientists could replicate his experiment or his theory, his mathematical equation, and they come up with the same answers. But you see, Einstein, although brilliant with math and science, he was a lousy philosopher. He was a lousy philanthropist, because at the time of the onset of the Second World War, he believed in passivity towards Hitler, just being passive and hoping he would go away.
Yeah, because I heard that the Nazis were really against his ideologies, right?
Well, I mean, they're against many people's ideologies, but the fact that Einstein's supposed to be a brilliant thinker, adopted that position, you know, there's no logic there. Just to look at Hitler building this war machine and the propaganda and everything he was doing. Hang on, you can look at that and go, no, passivity isn't going to fare up very well with this guy.
Absolutely.
So
No, we
I
need
think
a
we better start
revolution.
building some tanks and some planes and a few rockets ourselves, you know,
Yeah,
or
we
bombs
need a
in that
revolution.
particular time.
I think we
Yeah.
really are on the cusp of a revolution, to be honest. I mean, what's happening on YouTube, your channel being taken down, this sort of relentless job of getting rid of new understanding, sort of alternative views on our society. It's basically being taken off the platform because it's gaining strength and they don't want that. So I say push that narrative, push the real narrative of our true roots, you know?
Yeah. So what do you see around your peers? Because this has been interesting for myself and our viewers, because predominantly they're somewhat older and so not in touch with the youth. And so I know you've said in the last conversation that you feel a bit disconnected with them, or a lot disconnected with them.
Yeah.
Do any of them know what's going on? Do they know they're being controlled and
I
farmed and
mean,
manipulated?
the closest that they get to the spiritual realm is basically talking about UFOs, which I'm interested in. I won't deny that, but they don't get past that. It's almost like any mention of the soul, any mention of astral projection. It's sort of like they put on a wall and they kind of just dismiss it, and they can't relate. Basically, they
Yeah.
have hour-long conversations about their jobs, their bloody cell phone repair jobs. I mean, okay, talk about that if you want, but really, is that what you're interested in? Or are you just forcing yourself to talk about that because you feel like that you want more meaning to your own life? Well, if you want meaning, talk about something that has meaning, right?
Yeah, well, I think what the situation is because they wouldn't be socially acceptable. And probably, like, I don't know, you tell us, you see, about how you find engaging with your peers. If you tried to engage with people, say, for instance, have you heard about David Icke? And they go, who's he? And you'll go, is this guy that reckons this and reckons that. And he's studied 30 years. He's very, very popular. He does all these venues all over the world incessantly. And so there seems to be quite a lot of truth in it. What do you think about it? You know, what would they say?
Well, I mean, the first thing that they would probably jump on would be the whole, oh, he's a lunatic. He thinks that we're run by lizards.
Yeah, that's right.
Hopefully, I think that if you mention it enough, they'll basically start to kind of, maybe ironically, start to go into this kind of subject. But it's not until they really commit themselves to this idea of our reality hasn't got so many strict rules that they'll be able to understand this. Sorry if I explained that a bit.
No, yeah, that's cool. So have you tried to approach any of your friends?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, well, it's quite hard for me because I often just feel the inclination just start a topic that's just completely out there. But I can't really do that. I always have to work up to there.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that. I find it harder to do that than to just, push it right in front of their face.
Deploying a level of diplomacy.
Exactly.
To warm them up
Suggestibility.
into something. Yeah, because otherwise it's such a shock.
Yeah.
It's such turmoil for their mind, and then they'll get
Absolutely.
flung into this cognitive dissonance. Then they'll want to attack you or abuse you or toss you off or something like this.
Who knows? I mean, I do get a word in. I mean, we have talked about some quite philosophical subjects, like is there life after death? Talking that they believe basically that consciousness is just in the brain, which to me has a definite sense, has a definite logic to it. But it's not just the brain. I think there's an energy that animates the brain in the first place.
Yeah.
The brain isn't the animator of the body. There's something that's basically plugged into the brain that allows our conscious experience and subjectivity to, create this manifestation of reality. And they don't see that. They just see it as something purely physical, purely understood by neuroscience, which I think that's what science is doing to our society.
Yeah, that's right. And you see, you can't blame them, because this is all the information that they get from the academic world.
Yeah.
They're not taught anything outside of that narrow parameter. And so why is it then, Sam, that you find this sort of stuff readily acceptable? Because like you just said, you didn't say that, oh, I've read once that, that maybe consciousness is out there and we're sharing it and this, that and the other. No, what you said that you feel that there's something else. It's kind of like an intuition. It's kind of like an inner knowing. And this is the fundamental difference. This is the absolute critical difference between you, me, and them. You see, because we know something intuitively, we feel something with every vessel in our body, but over and above that, we feel it with an expansive awareness that there's more than what they're telling us. And so unless you feel that, then you're never going to really have any level of acceptance for it.
No, I mean, the first stage for me to make some sense out of what I'm talking about for them would be for them to experience something that is completely out of their conditioning, something that doesn't really conform with what they previously understand the world to be. And that's quite a hard experience to come across. It can come across through, psychedelics. That's like the biggest push, but really there's no real way to work at it unless it's relentless and almost obsessive. You have to really dedicate yourself to open up these people to this realm.
Yes, that's right. And that's what the people like David Icke have been doing, and myself for this past 5 years, dedicating ourselves to trying to open people's minds. And the whole premise of it is that you just keep going. And you see, lots of people, so I say lots of people, there's a handful of people who I've been privy to them speaking about me when they don't know I'm listening or reading or watching. And what they've said is, it's kind of like they're writing to somebody and they're saying like, what do you think about this Aaron at the Awake and Brave? Do you think he's mad? And then it's kind of like, well, when I first came upon him, I thought he was cuckoo. But there's something about him that just kept me watching. And so I watched out of interest, not really, believing or taking on board what he was saying, but he's an interesting character. And he has this presence of believability, how he's absolutely convinced in himself, And so the more they started to watch, then the more they started to think, well, I mean, it sounds feasible to me. If you know something about your body, if you know something about your mind, if you know something about the world, and I say the odd word here and there, which touches you,
which hits them,
in the core, and it's kind of like, well, fuck me. He sounds wacko, but that didn't sound wacko to me. This didn't sound wacko. And so I've had people that have been attracted to me like this, many people, and in time they come to have an understanding that, of course, I'm not wacko. I think out there, and the information that I've accumulated is very broad.
Exactly.
And so this is what people have an issue with. They struggle with the expanse of a person's knowledge. And I'm not saying that my information is like scholarly, that I know everything about a particular subject, because it takes you a lifelong time. No, I know something, a reasonable amount, about many subjects. And so
that's a similar case to me. Have you heard Dali's quote that basically says, a madman thinks he's sane, whereas I am sane. I mean, I know I'm a madman,
Right.
There's a difference between... I messed that up completely.
You should write your quotes down, young man.
I'm bad at talking, to be honest.
Well, no, I think au contraire. I think you're very good. And the whole thing about insanity, the more you learn about this world, the more you can lend yourself to feeling that you are mad. And like Ike says, it's a madhouse. When you learn about all this stuff, it's so incomprehensible. It's so non-rational. It's so illogical. It is mad what is going on to the world in every respect, poison the world with the chemtrails, destroying all the beautiful rainforests and
that's just
polluting the oceans and all of this stuff,
perversion.
Sam, it derives out of greed.
Greed,
it's just
ignorance.
about greed and control.
Yeah.
When they're destroying this most precious of jewels in this whole cosmos, we know no other. And honestly,
there's a very thin line between fear and control as well. I mean, the reason why they want to control is because they themselves fear that control being taken away from them.
Exactly. You know? And so they're riddled with fear, and so they perpetuate their control, and they destroy the planet. They destroy humanity. They're destroyers of everything. What would be the epitaph to put on their tombstone upon their death? This man had $50 billion in the bank, but what a criminal. What a Satanist. What an inhumane human being. We can't even call him a human being. The destruction, devastation that he's brought about on this glorious, beautiful planet. It doesn't make sense, mate.
No,
and so
really
what you end up doing is you start questioning whether they are, in actual fact, human beings. And this is where the whole lizard thing comes into it. This is where the whole Anunnaki thing comes into it. This is where the whole Nephilim thing comes into it. This is where the whole bloody Pleiadian and Arcturian and the Atlantean and all this stuff.
I'm fascinated by that Anunnaki myth. The fact that, like, it's very probable that there's some kind of genetic modification coming into human evolution. The fact that in a normal human birth, a human can't really have a normal birth unless there's tons of drugs involved, tons of painkillers. We're the only animal in the natural kingdom that needs painkillers for a birth to happen. And there's some evidence that there's some genetic modification in our sort of evolution, and that's where the Anunnaki come in, because they talk about how the angels kind of mated with humans, and there are lots of paintings where you see a massive human with a small human mating, and I don't know, there's just something in that definitely calls to
it's a good point, because when you look at all the animal kingdom, I have never ever seen a nature program which has depicted a lioness, a monkey, a baboon, a horse, you name it. I've never seen any of these crying out during childbirth.
Exactly.
Now, we can say that, oh, well, you see, this is nature's way of protecting the species, because let's have a look at the evolutionary thing. If these animals were crying out during childbirth or the birth of their offspring, then that would attract predators, and then that would be the demise of their species. Well, it was the same for us.
Yeah.
You know, so let's say 10,000 years ago, when there's wolves and bears and all this business going around. And that's only in Northern Europe. In the rest of the world, there's lions, cheetahs, tigers, and everything. Well, it's exactly the same. So that doesn't work. That hypothesis doesn't work. And so what's just sprung to my mind is that because you've said that, then okay, what is happening with the human being isn't entirely evolved. It isn't entirely natural. There's been splicing, and so therefore the baby is in actual fact too big for the pelvic region of
very probable,
female, because you see them all this business, and it goes on for hours. Whereas a horse, you know, just goes, drops it,
just farts it out.
Same as anything else.
Yeah.
But then you see, like, okay, we don't necessarily need painkillers, but we know they're there. We've invented them. And so, why not? You know,
Yeah, we've become comfortable to them. Yeah.
yeah, and this is it. If any other animal was experiencing such pain, and they could opt for a painkiller, I'm pretty sure they would as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so,
Definitely.
but yeah, this is the whole thing. There's something about the human birth system that doesn't kind of like
No, it
sit
doesn't
right.
really.
It's too over the top.
Yeah, it's a broken puzzle. It really
Yeah,
is.
it's too mad. And
Yeah,
particularly
and
in view of the fact that if we did evolve like all the other animals, then we should have had the same protection mechanism whereby we have learnt to give birth to our offspring quietly.
yeah, and we know so little about our history. I mean, there's so much evidence of massive cataclysms going through our evolution that just shows that there's tons of information that is not within our history books. Like,
Like how the fuck the pyramids were built.
yeah, that in the first place. I mean,
how these statues were erected on Easter Island.
lost technology.
How
Absolutely.
these 1,000-ton monolithic stones were laid to rest in a region where they never derived from.
Exactly.
You know, the mine or the quarry where they came from was hundreds of miles somewhere else. How on earth did they do that? And
No
so
idea.
Something that's
It's the work of gods. I mean, to us, that would be the work of a god. Now we have no idea how they do that stuff. And yeah, there's definitely some kind of ancient technology that we've lost as we've suffered so many cataclysms on this planet. Like, there's tons of evidence of it in the Bible with the flood and everything, you know.
And of course, the burning of all the information. So very few people have got this power. They know about the powers, and
biggest
they do
disservice on humanity ever.
To like do some sort of ritualistic sacrifice to the powers, because it appears in all cultures there's some sort of a ritual whereby something needs to be sacrificed. And so, you know, why is it that God demanded a blood sacrifice throughout the whole of the Old Testament? You got to have a burnt offering and all this sort of thing. Why is it that the Mayans insisted on taking a heart out of somebody's body every single day in fear that the sun wouldn't rise in the sky? All this sort of thing. So there was some culture here before which promoted that.
Yeah.
The burnt offering, the bloodletting, and the sacrificing.
Sacrifices, yeah.
Yeah, there's some negative energy that's been instilling that in us.
Absolutely, yeah. It's hard to decipher where it comes from, but it's whether it really has an effect on society. The fact that, you know, animal sacrifices and human sacrifices, whether it actually has an effect on humanity, that's not known. But it definitely does something to your psyche, to the individual psyche, and that would definitely affect it would definitely do something in the morphic, is it called the morphic field of consciousness?
Yeah, morphic field, morphic resonance.
So in a societal way, maybe it doesn't affect people in terms of what they believe in, but in the subconscious way of thinking of a human, that definitely affects us.
Now, that's a very good point also. And I love it when I hear this level of wisdom coming from someone so young. And there's been quite a lot of young people like yourself who I've engaged with over this last 5 years, being 17, 18, 20, and they're looking at the world like this, and they're talking and understanding this stuff like the morphic resonance field.
Yeah.
Now, for the benefit of some of the viewers who may not know what this is, it's Rupert Sheldrake's theory that there is a morphic resonance field all around us. And what actually this does is it carries information. And for instance,
a butterfly effect in consciousness. Basically.
Yeah. For instance, if, like, Sam, you're down in London now, are you?
Yeah, London.
Okay, you're in London and I'm in the Algarve, and if we were the only two people on the planet, and I was thinking of a new way how to get those coconuts down from the tree, and instead of climbing up and risking falling down and breaking my legs or something, I discovered that if I threw a reasonable sized stick at them, then I could knock some of them through. And within a very similar period of time, you discovered that too. It's a bit like fire. How did that come about? All over the planet, there was different cultures and different countries which were separated by masses of sea, and they never came together for thousands of years, and yet they all intuited how to build a fire. So this is the morphic resonance thing.
You can also apply this to our present times. If Einstein's workings wouldn't have been disclosed to anyone, perhaps we would have come to that information quicker, just because of the fact that a conscious human has experienced that, and there's a likeliness that our brain can reach that because someone else has, So yeah, that's an amazing theory, by the way, morphic resonance.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a reality, to be fair.
Yeah,
I mean, how can you prove something like that? You absolutely can't prove anything like that.
Yeah. We're linked. We're just completely linked.
Thing is about it, they can't prove Darwinism. There's nothing to suggest that Darwinism is remotely true, and yet they promote it like nobody's business, because
science is a religion. I mean, science itself is just a religion. You really have to be committed to understanding the world as a purely materialistic realm to really believe in it. I mean, to think that death, that after life, there's just nothing, it just goes to black, that's just as much as a belief as the afterlife is, as having a life after death. It's a belief.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a belief. And you see, what's the paradoxical situation about it is that all these intelligent people with PhDs in science, absolutely, they all have to be familiar with the double slit experiment. They all have to have some sort of knowledge about quantum mechanics. Yes. And their peers, the quantum physicists, have discovered that there is no corporality to this world dimension, and yet they incessantly go along looking for particles and reconfiguring particles and bashing them into each other and seeing what they can create and everything like this and all this sort of stuff, and spend an enormous amount of time in it, because the illusion is a very, very persistent one, as Einstein would say.
Yes.
And so the difficulty is, the paradox is that even though we deep down know that there's no reality, it seems like there is. And so when I knock on this table,
it seems physical.
So what do you do? You have to accept the paradox. And that's the whole thing about this whole dimension, this whole universe, this cosmos. It's a paradox. We are a paradox. Our mind's a paradox. Our consciousness is a paradox. Every single thing in it's a paradox.
It's a hologram. It really is a hologram. It's a projection of our inner psyche deciphering the world outside of us. But the world outside of us can't exist if there's not consciousness to perceive it in the first place. So, well, in theory, I believe that to be really true, because there's no information coming anywhere if there's not consciousness to perceive anything.
Yes, if there's nothing to think about it, if there's no thoughts to bring it into a reality, then there can't be a reality.
Yes.
It's kind of like, I tried to argue this one with a viewer of mine, and he wouldn't have it at all. I was saying that without language, there wouldn't be anything.
Yes.
Because you need language to determine that there is something.
Yes.
Otherwise, and he said, well, no, there'd still be rocks and trees and this, that, and the other. Okay, there wouldn't be rocks and there wouldn't be trees and there wouldn't be oceans.
Yeah,
because their words, their concepts, there would be stuff that you could bump into. There would be stuff that you could fall into and drown. But you see, how can you even say that? How can you drown if you don't have a word which brings it into existence?
Yeah, Terence McKenna was always talked about this, how our reality is just language in physical form. It's literally that.
Exactly, and language in physical form.
When you do psychedelics, you realize that it's almost like a more advanced version of our way of perceiving the world, where language kind of manifests itself into physicality instantly. right? I haven't had many psychedelic experiences, but I've heard from DMT experiences that basically it's that they're showing you things, and it's almost like language is transcended material universe. It's transcended that, and it's become something that's purely visual, purely light, basically.
Yeah, well, I had a couple more DMT experiences the other day, and the videos are up.
I
And
think
what
I've
I
seen them.
said in one of them or both of them, you can't describe what happens, because it's what you experience is ineffable.
Mm-hmm.
Just to even think about language is entirely preposterous.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what happens is then, it's the same on shrooms, it's the same on acid, so I've heard. It's the same on DMT. It's very similar in an astral projection. Putting dreams into words is almost impossible.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, it was like,
It's really hard.
and all this business. It's almost painful if you try to listen to somebody depict in detail a dream.
Yeah.
And so what can we derive from that then? What I derive from it is that this language has been forced upon us via an energy that wants to make it very, very difficult for us to
Wants to rationalize. It's all it
be
wants
able to engage in this other stuff. For instance, if you look at it like this, Sam, the powers that be know about all these entities, and they know about all these other dimensions. And after all, now quantum physicists say that there are definitely 14 dimensions, possibly infinite. And so that's something to think about. And so it's not too crazy to consider that there's probably other energies and other life forms in these dimensions. So we're open about that then, Mr. Scientific World, yeah? And so on the basis of that then, what it seems to me that the procurers of language have done, they've thought really long and hard, and have thought, okay, well, what we need to do is we need to create a language which cannot express, it isn't part of these other dimensions. Yes. We need language to lock out these other dimensions, and how we lock them out.
Us chained to material thinking and over exploiting our rational brain, right?
Yes, and so we have to relate everything to something which has a corporality to it. It has to be tangible, otherwise it doesn't exist. Unless, of course, it's like in the quantum world, and then they don't know that it exists. They're only theorizing. Nobody's ever seen an atom. They haven't ever seen an atom. An atom doesn't exist. It's just an energy that seems to be there. And so on the basis of that, then, we're given language, and we can't articulate that stuff. And so what we do is then, for the better part, we shy away from it, because most people, they're embarrassed of their lack of articulation. They are embarrassed because they can't express. They can't even depict one of their experiences via the language that they've grown up with and used for 40, 50, 60 years of their lives.
I think at some point on our evolution, language is going to have to be transcended. Language is going to become some kind of it's going to be like, I don't know, fucking signs, body signs and stuff like that. Just completely nonsense, really. I think at some point we're going to transcend language, and we're going to be able to, communicate telepathically.
Exactly. Yeah, because, okay, so if we're going to be doing sign language, then this is what originated before language. If you study how language originated, then you'll see it derived out of symbolism and signs. And so it seems to me that there's lots of people that have had this telepathic phenomenal power. Hopefully
it doesn't happen through technology as well. That's just something that I don't trust, man.
What do you mean it doesn't happen?
Hopefully we don't reach this level of telepathic communication through technological advances in our brain. So like external chips being messing with our brain and the way we understand, because I think there's a lot of manipulation that can go into that as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully we come to a self-actualized point globally where we're able to communicate in that telepathical way.
Yeah, okay then. So this leads on to another subject that I'm very versed into, and I've made many videos, and so no doubt you'll be privy to some of them.
Mm-hmm.
See, what humanity needs, it needs a shift in consciousness.
Yes.
And what the powers that be have been doing for this last umpteen thousand years is taking away our spiritualism, taking away our fantasy, taking away our dreams, taking away our imagination, and taking away our self-belief as ultimate power sources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That too.
And so when you start to take some of this back and you start to listen to people who are having mystical experiences, dreams, astral projections, they are deeply involved in meditation, and they experience many things through meditation. And I've been involved in all that sort of stuff. And what's happened is, to me, is that my consciousness now it's become very free. And I tell you, it's difficult to explain. It really is. But what it is that my awareness is so free and so broad, it encompasses the whole universe. And so I feel light. I feel so light and so energized by that, and so free, because I know what
you're in the world,
like.
But not of it.
Yeah, I know what it's like to think like this, Sam.
Yeah,
I've been there, and I know what it's like just to have what you think is you in here, always in here, always in here. It's not out there. It can't possibly be out there. They've always told us it's in here, in here, in here. And this is what 90% of the population is like. They're in here. But my consciousness isn't in here. Like you said before,
everywhere.
It's out there, it's everywhere, and it's feeding what is in here. It's experiencing what is in here, and I have a relationship with it. And I know that every single thing I do is watched, and it's observed, and it's partaken in. And it's not watched and observed like a peeping Tom or something like this. It's watched and observed like the wind around a bird in the sky.
Yes,
the wind around a bird in the sky is always there. And so
you become the fabric of your own reality. That's what you are when you reach that level of openness through conceptual thinking.
Can you not say then that the bird is the wind and the wind is the bird? Because for something to fly, it has to become.
Exactly.
It has to have a relationship. It has to partake with, it has to work in harmony with something else. And so
it needs a context so that it's able to manifest in a physical environment. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's quite nice metaphor, actually. And when you look at the depictions of symbolism around the world, with the eagle, with the wings spread abreast,
pure freedom.
Freedom and height, ascension, great vision, looking down over a broad expanse. There's so many connotations that you can level at that symbolism.
I mean, so many cultures use the eagle as an expression of higher consciousness. The Anunnaki. I recently went to the British Museum, and I was just in this corridor filled with amazing hieroglyphs and cuneiform texts from the ancient Sumerians. And there's these massive men depicted with hawk heads. And you just feel so much intelligence behind that. There's just such an understanding of that sort of level of awareness that you have. They're all in that. They're living from it. It's not a way of thinking. It's beyond that. I mean, there's not a word for it. You can't really describe it.
Yeah.
It's formless.
You're in something. That's what it is. You're in something. You're sharing something. You're a part of something. But what has happened these days is everybody thinks they're separate from everything and everybody. And it is very difficult to express to people. And when the New Agers go, we're all one, I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of them haven't got a clue what they're really saying. They're not feeling it. They don't know what it is to feel
it's very hard
like
to feel
they are all one. it's like lots of mystics, gurus. They'll say that when you have this certain experience of ego death, then you can't feel the you. The you-ness falls apart, and you become one with everything. And people talk about this in DMT, and they talk about it in high doses of psilocybin and all this sort of thing. But I take higher and higher doses of DMT, and I ain't getting close to passing out and being paralyzed like lots of people talk about. And I said in my video the other day, I will stand up even if I don't have any legs. That is my nature.
I think it's because you're so close. You're so close to that DMT realm on your day-to-day basis. That's why you're able
exactly.
To
I just go in there, and it's got so much familiarity to me.
You're ahead of your time.
The thing is about it is that I feel as if I have this ego dissolution.
Dissolution, yeah.
Dissolving. The dissolution of the ego, because I don't feel attached to this. Mm-hmm. I just look at this as an encumbrance.
It's a mask. It's clothes, basically. Have you seen Jim Carrey, the documentary of Jim Carrey, where he basically acts as Andy Kaufman in a film, but he becomes so obsessed with that role where he just becomes him. He brings his spirit to his own identity, in a sense. And it just shows that it's all a play. It's not real. It doesn't have a conformity, something that you can measure it by, because it's constantly changing. And you showed that very well in one of your videos where you're demonstrating, who am I? You know, you're constantly changing your masks, and it's unbelievable how people are so identified with this abstract, liquid idea. Unbelievable.
And the thing is about the message that Jim Carrey was conveying. You see, I think this is one of the things that set him on his spooky journey, because what he realized, what really came home to him when he was making this Andy Kaufman film, was that because he became this character of Andy Kaufman, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, hang on, I think I'm Andy Kaufman. When I'm in my regalia, I'm absolutely Andy Kaufman. All the other people around are looking at me as Andy Kaufman. And so, well, who the fuck am I? I'm supposed to be Jim.
Even the family of Andy Kaufman shows up to sort of greet the Andy Kaufman, the real one who was deceased. Yeah. I mean, how crazy is that?
Yeah. And so what he did was he lost his state of identity, because he looked at his life being an actor and a comedian, and all the time he's putting on personas. And even when he's not putting on a persona, I heard that his wife, maybe his first wife, I think, left him because she said he was mad. Well, you see, what he couldn't stop doing, he couldn't stop being in character. It was always being in a character. When you see him now, when you're having a conversation with him, like you see him being interviewed or something, he's always breaking out into some goofy character that he's played in the movies. He doesn't know what this is.
There's no solidity. There's no solidity to his identity. It's malleable, as it's meant to be.
Exactly. And only now he's come to the conclusion, and he tells everybody we're all tetrahedrons just bumping around with each other, and there's no such thing called life and existence, what we consider it to be, and this, that, and the other. And this is why he's took on a whole different persona. And what he does these days, I don't know whether you're aware, but he spends the vast majority of his time painting in his apartment, wherever he lives. It's an artist studio. There is huge paintings all over the place. All the walls are painted. There's racks and racks and racks of paint and everything. And he just gets...
Yeah, it's therapeutical.
Yeah, throws it and all sorts of things. And so what he is actually doing now, he is expressing, he's allowing whatever it is that's working through us to express itself through him. Because
I draw a lot. Sorry. Do you want to go ahead?
I was just going to say, because he's in the position whereby he has the freedom and the the affluence to be able to do it. And so therefore then,
Yes.
because he's got that, consciousness has attached itself to him even more and allowing him, helping him to express himself
Yes.
because he can. If you look at how consciousness works, then you see that it works with very, very free people. It works with people that are not in this. They're out there. They're a little bit, deemed to be crazy and scattering all this because they're not conforming to this narrow, dull perspective of reality. And so therefore, conscious works through it via this marvelous inspiration. And that's what it does with me. And this is why some people level at me. I'm a little bit cuckoo because I express myself in a whole 180 degrees and I don't care what anybody thinks.
You're embodying your true nature, which is infinity. I mean, there's no solidity to your
the paradox.
Yeah,
I'm not afraid of being contradicted or people telling me I'm contradicting myself or telling me that I'm not making a good point or any of this business, because all I will say is that I'm absolutely convinced that this is an illusion. The cosmos is a paradox. And so how could I be anything different?
Exactly. And what you was talking about, art, consciousness expressing itself through artwork. I draw a lot. And I've drawn for most of my life. And when you draw, you're not thinking. You're not in that state of thinking. You're not rationalizing every movement that you do with your pen. And you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to draw this now. Perhaps you do. There's some level of that. But it's something that comes deeper within you that understands what you want to see on that paper. And I get this crazy sensation after 3 months of having drawn a picture where I look at my picture, and because of the particular mood I'm in or the particular vibrational state that I'm in, that painting will speak at me and I'll know automatically its meaning. It's like consciousness is really revealing itself to me, what I have to do in my path to reawaken, or what I have to do in terms of what I want to dedicate myself at. It's all just expressing itself through something that doesn't need to express itself. You know what I mean? There's no need to express itself. It's there. It's already within me.
Yes, that's right. There, it is already, everything is here. And what I think is that, the Akashic records.
Oh yeah.
That the
fascinating concept.
The Buddhists speak of. Yeah. All the information is already around, and I'm absolutely convinced of that. And this is why you can get people like Einstein that just pick something out of the universe, like Picasso that just picks something, like Leonardo da Vinci just picks something, Isaac Newton just picks something. How is it that this stuff works?
All these revelations don't come through prior thinking. It's something that comes out of nowhere. You don't need to theorize it.
And what did Einstein says? He says it's like 98% inspiration, 2% perspiration. And so it's, look, if you look at any composers, if you look at Lennon and McCartney, for instance, writing songs for them were like making videos for me. I can just make a video any time of the day. There's always something to be said. And everywhere I go, I will get inspiration about so many things. And I could just keep banging videos up, endlessly. But I don't. And, it's like Lennon and McCartney when they're writing their songs, absolutely prolific songwriters.
Yes.
It just came to them. And Lennon and McCartney came together and it worked beautiful for them together, but it also worked beautiful independently. There was something that's working through them, 1 in a million, this sort of thing. So when certain people are in a certain vibration, then that is when consciousness takes the opportunity, seizes the opportunity to make manifest.
Yes.
Something beautiful.
And it's amazing Eckhart Tolle's way of thinking of consciousness, where you have to create space in your consciousness and in your way of thinking. You have to really understand that the inner voice that is speaking to you in your head, is just that. It's just a voice. It's nothing more than that. It only manifests itself in reality when you believe it to be true. But behind that thought, there is the I, there is the observer, you know.
Yeah.
And that observer is where it all comes from. That's where art comes from. That's where music comes from. It's a really intelligent force that doesn't need any outer influence. It's completely within itself intelligent, you know.
Yeah, well, it's difficult to define, and
Very. Yeah.
I'm quite ambiguous in how I approach this, because on the one hand, we can say that all the information is within the Akashic records, which we can say is consciousness, for want of a better pigeonhole to put it in, so to speak.
Yeah, I understand that.
I mean, where do thoughts come from? How do thoughts come about? Can we ever control our thoughts? Very, very difficult. But you see, there is something to be said for great inspiration, which isn't derived out of any man. Because when people like Einstein come up with E equals MC squared, then there wasn't a single man on the planet that ever came up with that equation. And it's like Isaac Newton coming up with or partaking in the development of calculus, and so-called discovering, the weakest force in the universe, gravity. But I think a lot of the stuff that we have as thoughts and impressions within our minds derive out of, like, what Jung would call the collective unconscious. Because
absolutely,
it would be reasonable to presume that through evolution, through genetically passing on the baton, let's say, I'm not going to say evolution because we've not evolved. There's been no evolution in us as human beings since the first one we ever fucking dug up the bones of. We're exactly the same, and so therefore through the genetic passing of the baton, then let's say, what happens is that it appears, and lots of people say this, that consciousness is attached to DNA. As are photons, they're attached to DNA, and so there seems to be intelligence in this light, in these photons, and so with the passing on of the DMT, with the passing on of the memories, with the passing on of the incessant storytelling from our ancestors,
it gets recorded. It goes somewhere. It's
recorded. It goes somewhere. In the cells of the body, in every single cell of the body, maybe, because out of every single cell, the tiniest cell of your body, that information holds all the information to everything. How's that possible? How does it know how to dance if you put music on? Yeah, how does it know all this stuff? And so therefore, the collective unconsciousness then is responsible for delivering us certain facets of information, which maybe our great grandfather once knew. Maybe he was an artist and he practiced, thousands of hours to develop a skill.
We're somehow psychically linked through our entire history, through our entire development. Like, I think in many ways, Terence McKenna was some kind of re-emergence of some other, perhaps Greek philosophers. I mean, his way of thinking really transcended that of the way of thinking of the general populace. And there's some kind of re-emergence happening through consciousness where we're picking up things from our ancestors, perhaps. The
beauty of Terence McKenna and people like him, you see, they've got the best of both worlds, because he was an absolute prolific reader, said to have read over 2,000 books, and a prolific taker over many, many years of psychedelics. And so when you've got those two things coupled with an intelligent, bright, inquiring mind, that's when you get the best of what man can offer.
Just imagine what would happen if scientists took psychedelics. I mean, the blending of psychedelic thought and scientific discovery, that seems like the pinnacle of our objective right here on this planet. If we can bring these two worlds together, spirit and objective reality, and decoding into some kind of concise understanding, that would be unbelievable. We would go miles away from our current state of understanding.
If it was readily accepted into our culture,
Exactly.
and we weren't indoctrinated into believing that we should be afraid of it, because this is the main obstacle to many people being free with themselves and experimenting with this stuff, because they've got a deep inner rooted fear which has been passed down via our predecessors and promoted and promulgated via the people that we're supposed to respect, authority, and all this sort of thing. And so we can have a tendency to have a certain fear about it. And the more programmed a person is, the more susceptible to authority, the more fear-based they're going to be.
Yeah.
See, like me, I'm not a fear-based person, and I'm not a stupid person in that I respect what I should be afraid of. You know, if there's a legitimate danger, then I naturally have a certain fear about it, which is the ego response of self-protection. And so the ego will tell me, you better be careful of this. And okay, I respect that. But if the ego wants to tell me stories, then I say, okay, what story are you telling me? You should be afraid about this. Well, hang on. Why should I be afraid about this? Well, you don't know what's going to happen, do you? No, I don't know what's going to happen. But why should I be afraid of that? I know one thing. I know it's not going to kill me. And I know it's not going to make me go crazy or affect me in an adverse way.
Ultimately, you have to know that it's not real, that it's just a thought.
Yeah. And I'm going into the depths of my consciousness where everything is contained. And so what really is this to be afraid of? I'm only being afraid of myself, aren't I? That's the ridiculous paradox of it, because
there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Yeah. And when people are afraid of taking psychedelics, it's afraid because they don't want to look in here. And it's the same with hypnosis. They're terrified. Even it's the same with meditation. The amount of people write to me and say, oh, what will happen here? What will happen there? And as soon as they start to feel a little bit of a sensation that they've never felt before, they don't want to do it anymore.
Yes.
And so this is the biggest obstacle for man.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a very hard obstacle to fight against. And when you get there, when you're really there, when you're able to understand that what you think of reality isn't reality itself. What really is reality is the foundation of your being, the foundation of the thing that makes your thoughts exist and manifest themselves. I'm a bit rusty.
Well, a combination of your brain and consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you were saying before. And if we nurture both of these, if we nurture our brain with free thinking and freeness and minimize the fear, then
surrender,
it will operate much more efficiently. We all know that if we start doing something, for instance, we're working on the computer and it's all going hunky-dory. And then you get a phone call and somebody informs you about something that really agitates you. You put the phone down. That's it. Your fingers are not hitting the key things. You're making stupid mistakes because you're out of sorts here. Because what's happened is you've been poisoned in your brain. It's like having a beautiful, tranquil garden, and the only thing in it is butterflies and bees. And then all of a sudden, you get a group of kids running around playing cricket, upsetting the whole calm of the place. That's what it's like. And so we have to protect this against that. And so we have to be very, very careful, mindful of the potential of stuff. Don't be afraid of it. Just realize the potential.
Respect it, yeah.
Involved in that.
And be willing to surrender to it if it does come across. Because when you resist it, that's when it grows. That's when you try to expand that sense of insecurity or expand that sense of discomfort to something that is giving you the illusion that you're under the illusion of control, giving you the illusion that you're basically in control when you're not. You're never in control. The only control you can have is the control to surrender. That's the real control, paradoxically.
Yeah, again, the control to surrender. There's a beautiful parable that I've heard a couple of times now, and I think on one of the occasions that Duncan Trussell.
I love Duncan Trussell.
Yeah, he's brilliant, isn't he? What a brilliant mind, and a
Absolutely
good laugh as well.
hilarious. Yeah.
Now the thing is about comedians, they're all very, very sharp minds. They're all well educated and articulate. And if you look at Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, Duncan Trussell, Chris Rock, and Eddie, on and on and on and on, they have this certain magic. And so he recited this parable, and it goes something like this. There was this Buddhist monk, and he was living up in the mountain in this monastery, and he was teaching his people a certain something. And then there was a general of an army, and
I think I heard this,
he wanted to have a word with this monk because he wasn't in compliance. He wasn't bowing down to the general.
He was the only one out of all of them. Yeah, I remember this.
And so the general goes to see him, and he stood before the monk, and he says to the monk, "Do you realize that I could stuff my sword through your stomach without even batting an eyelid?" No, let me correct. He said, "Do you realize who I am? I can push this sword through your stomach without batting an eyelid." The monk said to him, "Do you realize who I am? You can push your sword through my stomach and I won't bat an eyelid."
Hell yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate comeback, isn't it? That's just what we're all meant to be here doing, you know?
Isn't that beautiful?
Amazing, yeah. That gave me real goosebumps when I was walking around the park a few days ago.
Did you hear it then?
Yeah. I was listening to the Duncan Trussell podcast.
Oh, okay. So it was Duncan Trussell then.
Yeah.
That's it. And so when you look at it like that, what does that mean? You say to yourself, well, you say, well, look, what it means is that this monk is absolutely, completely and utterly confident that he isn't the body. And so
he's not the body and he's not the mind.
Yeah. And so you can do whatever you want to this body because he'll be back. He'll be back in a million other bodies or reincarnations of some sort of description.
Whatever it is, he'll be there.
Yeah. And so when you have that level of resignation, nobody can hold anything over you.
Yeah.
You're absolutely free. And I recite quite a lot what I heard from Charlie Manson when he was being interviewed in jail. And the interviewer said to him, like, you're gonna rot in jail all your life, Charlie. This, that, and the other. And Charlie says, "What jail?"
Exactly. The biggest jail is the fucking mind. That's the real jail.
He said, "You're in jail."
Yeah.
With your stupid suit and your stupid questions and your stupid boss and your stupid agenda. You're in jail, mate. I'm not in jail. My mind's free. You know, when I leave this conversation, I won't be thinking about nothing. I've got nowhere to go, nothing to do.
Basically, we have to die before we die, in a sense. We have to recognize that we're not in control, that our minds are basically meant to be used for practical reasons, for deciphering, for discerning things in our outside environment. But when it goes beyond that, when you're trying to discern your life, your subjective reality and your everyday problems, that's when you're completely subjected to this fear. You're completely subjected to this, oh, little me, you know?
Yeah, the little me syndrome. And with all the pressures that we have upon us, coercing us into being something that we don't really want to be.
Yes.
How many people are driven because society demands that they achieve something, they learn something? You've got to go to school and you learn all this shit, and then you go to college and you learn all that shit, and then you stay on to do your master's and then your PhD, and then we've done that, your learning isn't finished because your learning is going to continue, otherwise you're not going to have any value. So you've got to learn. And so we're going to keep you under pressure because we want you to rise to our expectations. And if you don't,
sterilization of knowledge, really. It's just
and so everybody is living in fear of non-acceptance. That's one of the greatest construct of the human being, that they're living bound in the illusion that it is required to have acceptance throughout the whole of society, and how we've achieved, or what we've achieved, and what we drive, and what we live in, and what we wear, and how we present ourselves, on and on and on. It's a freaking neurosis.
Really is. Yeah. It's unbelievable how we've come to this point in the first place. I mean, we have really subjected to ourselves to authority through history. It's just so evident that we have basically trusted our ego too much. We've trusted our ego too much in our everyday lives, and we have to realize what's behind the ego, basically.
It's a very curious thing, because I was just having a conversation with another member. He's called Mark, only he calls himself Jalen on the site.
Mm-hmm.
And we were saying the same sort of things. And I have to ask myself why. Why is it that we are concluding the same things? It's not like I'm driving the conversation in any particular way. We're flowing with it, and you are completely free to come back with whatever you did, and you do. And we come to this same sort of conclusion that you've just mentioned there. And it's a case of, well, what is it that's driving us on so much, that's stealing away that which we really are?
Yeah,
stealing
our real
away
vitality.
In every sense, because the only time we really get a semblance of what we really are is when we do something absolutely from our heart. And primarily what comes from the heart is art.
Yeah.
It's music,
Yeah.
it's dance, it's singing, it's design, it's painting, it's anything creative. What comes out of the human inspiration when the mind is free? That's when the creation begins. When the mind isn't free, the creation is closed down. And so this is the situation that people, that they're all having the creation killed, suppressed, and they're becoming automated, solely automated, without any compassion and expression.
And there's a real link. I've heard that there's actually a link between the brain and the heart, that the heart actually thinks for itself quite often. The heart isn't just some organ that pumps blood through your body. That's not all that it does. It's actually kind of the real center point of your internal matrix, in a sense. So that's where it all comes from. That's where the source of everything that you put out into your outside world. The heart is really that. Yeah,
there's this thing called heart math. Don't know whether you've ever heard of it, with Greg Braden. He's one of the greatest promoters of it, and what he says, and many other people, this heart math, basically what you have to do is you have to build a relationship with the heart and with the brain and with the consciousness. And when these three are working in unison together, then that's when the equation of the heart math really comes into its own.
Yeah.
And so it is said that the electromagnetism of the heart it varies so many times. It can be 5,000 times greater than the brain. It can be 500 times greater than the brain. But whatever the figure is, the electromagnetism is greater in the heart than it is in the brain.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. There is an enormous amount of neurons in the heart, and there is more neurons in our digestive system than probably in the brain altogether. Our digestive intestine system is massively intelligent. And so when you look at it like that then, and you think, well, hang on, should we really be giving so much emphasis to the genius of the brain? Particularly due to the fact that we know fuck all about it. Really?
Yeah. Maybe there's something to do with the chakras too. I mean, considering that there's some kind of intelligence going all throughout the body, the chakras is a rationalization of that, perhaps through our culture. Maybe the brain isn't the ultimate organ as most people think of it as. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I would suggest it's not. I would suggest that the organ is the one that, you see, if we depend on logic and if we depend on the ego, then what we're doing is we're depending primarily on information that's been imparted to us by somebody else. We take that information on board as a reality and as true. How much information do we know about this world that we have experienced firsthand? Do we know how far the sun is away? Do we know how far the moon is away? Do we know what the diameter of the world is? Do we know how deep the Mariana Trench is? Do we know how tall the Eiffel Tower is? Do we know how long the Forth Bridge is? Do we know any of these questions? Absolutely.
we don't know
We
anything.
do not. We take somebody else's word for it. And then we go, the sun is 93 million miles away. And then the Earth's the
When you try and fight back against that, I mean, when you try and fight back against that, it's almost an impossible feat. Have you seen Deepak Chopra debating with Richard Dawkins?
I have, yes. But just let me finish this one, if I may,
go
Sam.
ahead.
What I'm saying is here is that this is all the brain shit. This is all the logic. This is all the poison that we've had our minds filled with. And so, if your heart feels in a certain way, who's told you? Who told it to feel a certain way?
Yeah.
So I just rest my case. The heart is thinking for itself. Nothing and nobody has told it what to think. What may happen is that somebody will tell you, and your brain and your ego will generate a neuronal fission within your mind, which in turn will generate some hormones, some chemicals, which then may send signals to the heart and start it palpitating and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, this is why the whole premise is that go with your heart, because your heart overrides the bullshit of your mind, because your mind is a liar. It's full of information that we can't depend on. And so if you've ever got to choose between the two, make sure it's your heart, people.
Yeah. It's amazing how that is shown in ancient Egypt with the symbol of the heart on the weighing scale.
Yeah.
With the feather on the other side. That's a real life metaphor that you have to really sort of live by.
And so with
Everyone
these people that were so very, 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 very switched on, they knew which organ was the one that you should stand accountable for.
Yeah, that's an example of science and spirituality blending to a perfect collision. Really is.
Yeah, because the brain, you see, you can do something wrong to people and you can justify it via logic. And you can say, well, they were going to do it to me if I didn't do it to them, or if I didn't steal it, somebody else would have. You can justify your actions in a whole myriad of ways. But what you can never get round to placating, making atonement for, is for the way in which the heart feels about something. Because this is the whole premise of psychedelics, you see, and this is what happens when you get older. When you get past 50, all of the things you did as a younger person will start to revisit you. And this is why so many people end up on psychotropics or on the therapist's couch, because they have this stuff going on. And this is why people want to go to do ayahuasca, because they want to get a resolve on the things that are haunting them.
Yeah, and they want to become a child again.
Yeah, that's right. They want to get
that's
all
the
of
heart,
this
the inner
stuff
child
off of their chest. And this is the whole thing with atonement. And I was speaking with Rachel about the power of atonement, about the power of apologizing, getting it off your chest. I was wrong. I wish I never did this. Just get it out. All you got to do is get it out, people. And this is the whole premise behind Freudian psychology, talking therapy.
Speak your truth no matter what people think of it. That's just ultimately the path you're meant to take. And David Icke has certainly proved that that's the right way to go. He was ridiculed and he committed to it. I don't know if I would have committed to it after what he talks about happened to him in pubs. I mean, that's just so devastating to most people. But if you stick to it, that's when you transcend it. That's when you transcend judgment. You transcend your little me, and you live from your inner child, the heart.
This is the whole thing, you see. It's about having balls. David Icke says, when
now we're getting to the balls.
like, what if they take you out? He says, they can't take me out. And then the interviewer, it was London Real. I think his name's...
I've seen that one too, yeah.
Yeah. What's his name? That London Real guy, Rose, John Rose, is it, or?
I haven't seen enough to know his name.
Okay, I think it's something Rose anyway. But he says, what if they take you out? And Ike's like, they can't take me out. And Rose looks at him as if to go, how do you know that? I mean, who the fuck are you? You're just, one guy that drives a Mondeo and does a few shows. What makes you so confident? But what makes Ike so confident? The spirit that is working through him. And
exactly.
The spiritual encounter he had many, many years ago, standing on the top of the hill in the pouring rain, holding his hands out, his arms out like this, and having lots of feelings about a presence being around him for several months. And so he's had all this stuff. And so he has an energy and a power that most people don't recognize. And I have something which is similar to that, because what happens to me is when I get compromised, of course, like most people, the rational mind says to me, oh, do you want to do this? Do you want to go through all this, that and the other? And I'll think, well, fucking hell, what's my options? I could just be basking in the sun and having a marvelous time. But what always happens is, Sam, that I get energized. And it happened. And the reason why I'm saying this, because it happened in the gym today. Now, being 54 and working out, most days of the week and this, that, and the other, I'm doing pretty good. But sometimes I can start to feel that, age is encroaching upon me.
Yeah, I watched that video, actually.
Yeah.
You're talking about it.
But today, having had a lot of issues, which I created myself out of my ignorance for technical stuff. I'd done something and I couldn't enter my site. And I thought the site was bugged, or I thought it had been infiltrated. But all I'd done the previous day, I changed my email, which then changed the configuration of my password. And I didn't know that. And I couldn't get into the site. And I thought, oh my God, is this ever going to end?
Yeah, so anyway, I hate that too. Technical shit.
Yeah, I went to the gym. And before going to the gym, I thought, am I up for going to the gym? And I went, of course you're up for going for fucking gym. Get to the gym. Soldier. I'm like, aye, Captain. And so I go to the gym. I'm in the gym. And then all of a sudden, what happens? All of a sudden, a fucking huge surge of energy, of youthfulness comes over me. And often I can have a bit of a pain in my hip.
Just pumping it, aren't you?
Something in my knee. And I've lost my Springbok Gazelle type fucking thing that goes on with younger people. But that came back today. I was bouncing up and down. I never had any problems or nothing. I felt so light. I felt like I was 35 years old again. And I said, thank you.
Yeah, because and that comes from non-compliance with that voices.
There's something that works through me which is far, far bigger than this. And this is what I've said all along. I don't know why I'm doing this, because most of the time I wish I didn't have to. But I'm given inspiration, and I'm given this enormous feeling of well-being day and night, and that enables me to do it. So
you're giving without wanting to receive.
Yeah, whatever I'm doing, Sam, I'm doing a service to mankind, but there's something that's paying me. Seriously, there's something that's paying me. It's paying me with longevity. It's paying me with peace of mind. It's paying me with the blissfulness that I'm feeling every single second of the day. I go to bed, I'm in bliss. I wake up in the night, I'm in bliss. In the morning, I'm in bliss. I take DMT, I'm in bliss. I meditate, I'm in bliss. I'm in the gym, I'm in bliss.
Bliss 24/7. That's what it is.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, bliss is what it is.
There's more to this world than your philosophy, dear Ratio.
Yeah.
What did you say? There's more to heaven and earth than your philosophy, dear Ratio. Yes, there is a whole lot more to what's going on. And when you tap into that...
Yeah.
Sorry?
Well, I was just going to change subject a bit, but you go ahead.
What was I going to say? I was going to say... When you tap into that, okay, we'll just finish off this particular subject. Sure. When you tap into that, and you're already naturally, instinctively tapped into that. I can tell that by the way you're thinking, your disposition, everything. And so this is the curious thing, and this is the question that we all have to ask when we're trying to wake people up. Is it possible? I don't think it's possible, because what has to happen is we all have to wake up from our slumber at our allocated time. We can't go waking people up, because if we do, what happens? They get grumpy at us. And
they build bigger walls.
Yes.
They create bigger walls.
Yeah, and they put up a bigger front, and they're more mardy, and they're more agitated, and all the rest of it. So we have to leave them to their own devices.
You have to be suggestive.
Suggestive, and I think the greatest thing is to be the world that you want to see. The proverbial Gandhi saying, and lead by example. You just lead by example, and then you can teach. You can just teach. And I mean, this is the way I'm going really with my philosophy, and it's just kind of like casual. I just like being out in the nature, and when I'm in the nature, I'm inspired, and then I just want to remark, have a discourse on whatever it is that's been inspired to me by the divine inspiration.
Absolutely.
I don't want to tell anybody that it's right or wrong, and I don't expect anybody to believe it or feel it. This is my experience. And
it's transient.
You can't experience my experience. Nobody else can. And so why should I be so adamant that people should? And so now I have this resignation that I have been given this gift of a certain level of articulation and expression. And there's been quite lots of people that have enjoyed this. And I actually enjoy making the videos and everything, so I'll continue to do that. And that's all I can say, that I will be doing my bit in this universe, which is given to me via the divine inspiration.
Awesome. That's amazing. I really want you to keep at your videos. I think a lot of people do. It really brightens up people's days as well. What was I going to talk about? I was watching one of your videos that I found.
Thank you, by the way.
No,
thank you.
No worries. That video where you're showing this rock that's shining in the sunlight and it's reflecting perfectly at you.
Yeah.
Those moments of like synchronistic happenings in your outside environment, those are fascinating to me, and I've had a few of those.
Right.
And it would be curious to try and understand what is really happening to. Is it really something that you can describe through concepts, or is it something that goes beyond that,
Yes, I believe it's something that's beyond it, of course, because you're in the realm of the spiritual. I'm going to engage with you on this because I have quite a few questions that I'd like to hear from your perspective. And so therefore, I don't want to say what I consider it to be. I want to hear you say it, and I want the viewer to be privy to you saying it first. And so what do you think's happening when things like this occur?
Well, I think it's a sign, basically. It's a recognition within yourself and within the universe of some sorts that's telling you that you're on the right path, that you're in the right vibrational state. And I had a crazy experience once. I'm a very imaginative person, and often when I would always go through this track that goes from my town through to the little village that I lived in. And this track, I always walk it when it's nighttime.
Right.
And it was a day where thunder was coming and lightning was basically all around. And I was making my way through this path, and there was music in my earphones, very sort of meditative, almost trance-like music. And I would sort of, this sounds quite bizarre, but I would spin, get dizzy, and do what you used to do in the forest, where you'd cross your eyes. And I would kind of detach myself from the external environment and see it as something that no concept can grasp. If you do that long enough, something truly amazing happens. And it was proved to me as I started to run. I just started to run immediately after getting really dizzy and kind of, and that literally the moment that the song starts and really hits basically when the beat drops, the real beat drops in the song, I jump and there's a lightning bolt, and I'm just startled, and I keep on running, And it happens again. I jump again when the beat drops, and there's another lightning bolt. And that to me really, really hit me. I was just awestruck. Something was definitely speaking to me at that moment. There's a point where coincidences aren't just coincidences. It's something beyond that, you know?
And so if people who are not versed in this sort of stuff listen to that story and they go, coincidence, and they wouldn't feel anything. They would not feel nothing.
Yeah.
And if they'd never had an experience, they will dismiss it in an instant. So what I want to ask you then, so we can get to the real depth and core of this.
Yeah.
Why do you think that you felt that it meant more than coincidence? What is it?
Because there's almost like a recognition within yourself that you know it's going to happen. Because you're in a state where you're not rationalizing, you're not thinking, you're not trying to understand it. You just know you're absolutely everything that is happening within your environment. And if you surrender yourself to that, if you surrender yourself to pure awareness, that's when you and the universe, you and the outside world blend, because it's just there. It doesn't need to be anything else than that. It just needs to be there. And it can speak to you when you're in that state, you know? You just need to be open for it, and it will show you that you're in the right place, you know?
Yeah, and that's a curious thing, because it can sound a little bit new age. It can sound wishy-washy, guru-ish stuff.
Could be.
At the end of the day, there is a feeling that comes out of it, which you intuit that is positive. How you interpret this is probably open for speculation.
Completely,
because you see,
it's all subjective.
Yeah, if you are desirous to do something, like, for instance, if 3 days ago you had a prayer and you said, "Oh God, please, I want this new job, or I want this new car, or whatever," and then you're consciously waiting for the manifestation of a sign. And so if a sign like that happens, you think, that's it then. God's told me that, you know, he's heard my message and it's going to happen, because that's your train of thought. You prayed for God and you consider that this was a godly thing, and so God answered your prayer. But if you don't pray to God, and if you don't ask for anything, if you've got no design about anything, but if you're open to everything, then you'll see stuff.
That's
the key. That's the key. You see stuff and you hear stuff. And I'm always saying that when you open up your mind and your heart, people, and you get rid of your shit, you will live in a different world that you've never recognized and known before. And so what happens is then, when you are free, and this happens so much to me because I am free every single day. I've been free every single day within reason for the last 12 years. You know, very little to do with a few occasions within this period. And so my mind has become very, very relaxed. I've been meditating every single day for 5 years, and I sleep like a baby, and I don't have any stress or anything like that. So my mind is open to the world. And when things like this happen, like a leaf falling from a tree, or seeing a rainbow in a bead of water clinging to a blade of grass, when you notice the tiniest things like that, then
you're in the flow of life.
You're in the flow of life. And that's when you know God consciousness, Mother Nature, whatever it is talking to you. And it's saying, welcome.
Exactly.
Welcome.
And so, if they want to disagree with you, they can go ahead. But nothing beats that intuition you feel.
That's right. You know undeniable. It because you're there. You saw it. You're the only person on the planet that saw that rainbow in that bead of glass. You're the only person that jumped with those two particular bolts of lightning. I was the only person that saw that mirror because I was standing at a particular angle to it, which directed it straight back to me. Probably 50 feet either way. Nobody would have ever recognized it. And I was standing on a, let's say, a promenade on the cliff, bit of a peninsula, high up, 100 feet up, and I'm standing there and I'm looking out and I'm observing everything. And then when the wave came in and the wave went away, all of a sudden it
there it is
to me.
And
the video was absolutely remarkable. It was like a portal into another dimension.
Unbelievable.
You saw the sun rays beaming out from it. And that, what did that do for me? It didn't tell me that...
It felt like a mirror.
Yeah, there's nothing spectacular over and above every single day of my life that's going to be happening to me.
Yeah.
I just looked at that and I said, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely thank you. And I know why you deliver these things to me, because you know that I appreciate them. Exactly. Like every flower, every blade of grass, every piece of bark, every seemingly dead leaf, but the dead leaf has probably got more life about it than the live one, because the dead one is absolutely covered inside and out with so many microorganisms because it's in a state of decomposition. And so therefore, don't ever let anybody tell you anything's dead. It's more alive than you're more alive when your heart finally stops than you are now, because
it's conscious. It all is.
You're 65% living organisms now. Microbiology, 65%. That's what they reckon these days. And so when you die, you'll be 100%.
Absolutely, yeah.
More alive when you're dead.
Do you mind if I just go to the toilet?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go for it. I can just pause this right now. I've got all the technology. So we're back again.
Mm-hmm.
Just had a quick pit stop. Made myself a nice cup of green tea. Beautiful. And so you've got another sort of topic that you've chosen.
Yeah, I've become really interested in the effect of psychedelics on our culture, and there's so much evidence that Christianity and Amanita muscaria go hand to hand. So much.
I'll tell you what we're going to do then. I think we'll break this down into 2 videos.
Okay.
Because we can start this one with the Christianity and Amanita. So, people, this is you go to the next recording if you want to continue this conversation.
Cool.
Bye.
Goodbye.